Okay, this video is a demonstration of some of the new features that I'm working on incorporating into the Timesheets app for the Spring 2012 glotting season. Please keep in mind that this version of the app is still under construction, so there are a few things that aren't hooked up at the moment. For example, the time to next inspection for each airplane and the cockpit time for the pilots are currently not doing anything, but they'll be back in service fairly shortly. For this demo, I'm using an iPhone and an iPad because that's what I happen to have available, but you can use any number and combination of iOS devices that you happen to have. The major advancement in this version of the app is that it is now powered by an SQL database. This database allows it to keep track of what is going on at each glotting center separately. So if the phone is set to the Edmonton glotting center, and the iPad is set to the Gimli glotting center, each device will see what is going on at that glotting center. So they can each, for example, make changes that affect their glotting center. So at Gimli, we'll add a takeoff over here. And there we go. Now, since the iPad includes iCloud support, each device actually knows everything that the other iPads know as well, although it can take up to a minute of lag. So over here on the iPhone, if we pop over to the Gimli glotting center, we'll probably eventually see that plane that just took off appear up at the top. Now, there can be up to a minute of lag in this because of the way iCloud is designed. And there we go. So the iPhone now sees the changes that have been made over on the iPad, and the devices are in sync. So this should give the feel of operating one big operation for the entire region, and more importantly, it means that either device could print out daily, weekly, or end-of-season reports for the entire region. This version includes multi-region support. You can choose your region in settings, though normally you wouldn't have to, because it can do it automatically using the GPS. But since I'm in Winnipeg, it's not going to give me any region but Prairie, so we'll set it to Atlantic. So when you have your region set, you'll notice that the list of glotting centers is now the glotting centers from the Atlantic region, and the aircraft are now the Atlantic region's aircraft, and at the bottom you can see the L-19s. And for the rest of the demo, I'll just set that back to Prairie region. And we'll carry on. Now, I researched databases for about a year before deciding to do SQL with iCloud support. I found that in my research that there's various solutions out there, but most of them fall into two categories. One is to store the database on the web. This would not be acceptable because if the internet connection goes down, the system would become useless. The other approach is to use a local database. This works well enough, but at the end of the day, it becomes somebody's job to compile the information from all the local databases at all the glotting centers and get information out to the local databases as required. iCloud is different. iCloud stores the complete database on each device and simply serves to keep the devices in sync. I think this point is so important that I'm going to do a little demonstration. Let's suppose that the internet in Gimli is out. I'm going to simulate this by putting the iPad into airplane mode. Airplane mode forces all the radios to be turned off and essentially cuts the iPad off from the rest of the world. As you can see, the iPad can still see everything in the database the way it was when the internet was turned off. So if you switch it to Edmonton, you can still see what Edmonton was at that moment. Switch it back to Gimli. If you want to add a pilot to an airplane, the list of pilots is still available. So let's say that somebody does some flying while the database is offline at Gimli. So they land these two airplanes. All right. Now, from the point of view of the other device, it doesn't see that those airplanes have landed. And how could it? Because the iPad was completely off the internet. Meanwhile, if this really was Edmonton's device, they'd probably continue doing flying of their own. So they Let's say they launch an airplane. Okay, now at this point we've got a bit of a problem because there's two different versions of the database, one on the iPhone and one on the iPad. So what's going to happen when the internet in Gimli eventually starts working again? So I'll turn airplane mode off, and the iPad will find its way back onto the internet over time. Now, there's a lot of potential here for there to be conflicts between the two, but thanks to the architecture of iCloud, it will seamlessly integrate them into one database. It can take a moment. Let's see. We'll set this over to Gimli, and as you can see, the landings at Gimli have now been recorded. And as you can see on this one, the takeoff at Edmonton has now been recorded. So the two devices have seamlessly come back into sync, and now both devices are all-knowing once again, and both devices can produce reports for the entire region. So this technology is still in development, and as with all such projects, setbacks are possible. But as you can see, all the necessary technology is in place. And even if iCloud does not work out, the app will still have a very powerful local database. In the future, it is possible that we can make companion apps that use the same database for other things like training cards, pilot training records, and so on. Thank you.